Looking for a way to reconnect and reset? Awaken Pittsburgh offers free guided meditations open to everyone, online and in person, on the first and third Wednesdays, second Saturdays, and third Mondays of each month. Each session includes guided practice, reflection, and space for questions and support. No experience needed. Sign up on Eventbrite and join the community.
Hello friends, my name is Stephanie Romero and I am the founder and executive director of Awaken Pittsburgh. I want to welcome you to our podcast, The Ripple Effect. Awaken Pittsburgh is a nonprofit dedicated to fostering well-being, empathy, and compassion for all by teaching and encouraging mindfulness and meditation practices. I also want to take a moment to let you know that Awaken Pittsburgh offers many other opportunities for practice and connection. For example, you can join our online community, which features a space to more deeply explore the topics we cover with our guests. We have weekly posts to spark thought, practice, and reflection. I hope you will come join us to explore, connect with others, and deepen your practice. You can find out more at awakenpittsburgh.org. Today, I'm honored to welcome two exceptional therapists, supervisors, trainers, consultants, and community leaders, Sylvia London and Irma, also known as Ñeca, Rodriguez. Sylvia and Irma are truly international experts, bringing their profound knowledge from Mexico City, where they live, to Pittsburgh and beyond. They are the founders and faculty of Grupo Campos Elíseos, a respected training institute in Mexico City. They're deeply committed to Integrative Community Therapy, also known as ICT, and coordinators and trainers for community conversations in action at Awaken Pittsburgh. As faculty and consultants for ICT at Visible Hands, they began this great work. Their commitment to collaborative practices is further demonstrated by their roles as board members of the International Certificate in Collaborative Practices, where they also serve as co-directors of the ICCP at Grupo Campos Elíseos. A testament to their dedication to community, they are the founders of Centro de Atención a la Comunidad, Paulo Solo, in Mexico. With their wealth of experience, they are also faculty at the Houston Galveston Institute, Taos Institute Associates, and active members of the Mexican Association and Council of Marriage and Family Therapy. I am really, really happy to have this time to speak to Sylvia and Ñeca today on the podcast. So Sylvia and Ñeca, I'm so grateful to have the opportunity to get to know the two of you a bit better. We have started working together fairly recently, and I know a little bit about the work in the world that you do, but I'm really excited to deepen that relationship and really learn more about your journey into what you do in your world and in your lives.
So thank you for inviting us. I think it's a pleasure to be with you. And it's a pleasure. It has been a pleasure working with you and sharing ideas and going your way and back to us in a very friendly way. So thank you.
Sure.
So thank you, Stephanie. We are very excited to work with you and also to talk about integrative community therapy and our journey in the US as part of our journey as family therapists and therapists that work from a social constructionist perspective.
I love that. Okay, so great. So talk about a little bit about your work, both of you as therapists, and then maybe how that ended up bringing you to
we're going to call it ICT from now because it's easier to say, for Integrative Community Therapy. Yeah, I'd love to hear that journey.
Would you like to start, Sylvia?
Well, I'll start. I'm a family therapist, and many years ago, I met Harleen Anderson, who is a creator of collaborative dialogic practices. And she was one of the teachers in my training as family therapist in Boston many years ago. And we have kept a relationship and a friendship for many years that led to bringing collaborative dialogic practices first to Mexico and then to the rest of Latin America. And eventually we created an international certificate in collaborative practices, created a journal of collaborative practices. So we've been teaching and practice collaborative dialogic therapy for the last 30 years. So that would be sort of the main practice we have in therapy. We have a training institute in Mexico that's called Grupo Campos Elíseos. And we have been training therapists in postmodern, social constructionism, narrative, solution-focused practices, and collaborative dialogic, of course, for the last 25 years.
Okay, so in this journey, something that has been very important in the way we approach our supervision, our teaching, are the collaborative dialogic practices, because these have gave us a way to connect with others, to understand the importance of listening, and to constructing together and doing things together in a way that we can collaborate and we can build relationships with other people.
And also for the last 25 years, we have been hosting what we call the International Summer Institute, and we have been doing it mostly in Mexico for the last 25 years with Harleen Anderson. And that has been sort of the lab where we have played with collaborative practices with practitioners from all over the world. And Ñeca and I have been the ones that have been working, presenting, and organizing the Institute with Harleen for the last 25 years. So in that sense, we have been bringing practices that were created in the States, in the UK, in Australia, to the Latin American world. So what we do is we have been tropicalizing these practices to fit the different cultural needs. And that's how we end up meeting Adalberto Barreto in Brazil.
And in our work in Grupo Campos Elíseos, we had like part of the work that we have been doing, it has to do with building communities. So we were working in a particular community outside or in the outskirts of Mexico City. And there we create a community clinic and we create different activities that has to do with build the community and provide resources for the members of the community. So we introduce also a single session, one session at a time, as part of the way of delivering attention to the community. And that project was also a training project for our students because it was a theory and practice going hand to hand. So we create these groups of students that were practicing, and at the same time we were providing a service to the community. So in our way of working, we have been always bringing theory into practice and practice back to theory and trying to learn what is it that the community needs in order to create projects that make sense for them and for us.
And on top of the work we have done as therapists, we have been training therapists also for the last 25 years, doing training, doing supervision in Mexico and in many other parts of the world. And also we have done consultations for schools, we have trained teachers, and we have done consultations for organizations in terms of creating better organizational environments. So that's the scope of our work. We schools, with organizations, with communities, and also, of course, in private practice with individuals.
So let me just ask, the collaborative dialogic practices is a therapeutic modality for
Yes.
individuals?
No.
Only in the collective. That's what I was curious to hear. Okay, so it's only
Yes,
in the
it's also for
collective.
individuals. We use
Okay.
collaborative dialogic practice to work with individuals.
Mhm.
We use it to work with families, with couples, and we also use it for the collective. The main thing is that you, as Ñeca was saying, you create with the other the kind of conversation that makes sense to them and to you. It's based on hermeneutics. We are very connected to the meaning that people attribute to their experience. And together with them, we develop different understandings of their experience that provide change.
I love that. So when I was doing my doctoral work, the idea of hermeneutics and also a type of inquiry where you're giving voice to the people that you are trying to understand, right? Where you're really letting them kind of drive the car, so to speak, really, really appealed to me then. And in community-based work, which is what we do, so important, right? So important. So I love hearing about this, and it's exciting me as we're talking. So that was fantastic, and I just learned so much from both of you, just in that little bit. But you said you were tropicalizing these kind of North American, UK, Australian ideas and techniques. So that to me is just amazing too. And then that's how you met Adalberto Barreto, who, for folks listening, is the founder and developer of Integrative Community Therapy. So yeah, tell me about how that happened, and how did you decide that this was going to be a modality you wanted to bring to your work?
So before talking about Barreto, we want to talk about our bridge to Barreto, which is our friend and colleague, Marilene Grandeso. Marilene is a therapist in Brazil, and she was the first president of the association of the Brazilian Association for Integrative Community Therapy. But she also happens to be the one in charge of teaching collaborative dialogic practices in Brazil. So through her institute, we met Adalberto. So Marilena introduced us to Adalberto. She also has a training of integrative community therapy in her own institute. So that was a way we met Adalberto. We went to a couple of ICT conferences in Brazil, and that's how he got to know us.
And we also attend to a ICT conference. So it was the opportunity to get to know in a closer way what the integrative community therapy was about, and to learn about the whole community they have, because it's a very large community. It started in Brazil, but now it's in almost all the Latin American countries. And also it's in Europe, mainly started in France because Adalberto studied there. So he had already a community of people with which he was connected to. But now you have also ICT in Switzerland and in other countries, in like Indonesia and other countries as well. So it's an international practice, and it has a very, very large community of practitioners.
And we have brought ICT to the Netherlands and to Denmark and to Greece. Those are the 3 European countries we have done and we have presented on integrative community therapy. So maybe going back to how come we ended up teaching for visible hands. So when Ken Thompson and Alice Thompson, who were the ones that wanted to bring integrative community therapy to the United States, founded Visible Hands Collaborative in conjunction with Adalberto. They wanted Adalberto to teach in the States. But it just happened that Adalberto's English is not very good. It's getting better by the minute, but he almost didn't speak English. So integrative community therapy was in Spanish-speaking countries and in French-speaking countries, because that's what he speaks, but not in Anglo-speaking countries.
And Portuguese countries.
And Portuguese, sorry. That's very smart that you remember in Portuguese, mainly in Brazil. So he was looking for a group of practitioners and facilitators that could join him in the training of ICT in United States. So he invited a few trainers to join him in this process of bringing ICT to the US. And we believe he chose us because our history of tropicalizing Anglo-speaking practices to Latin America now was the time to do it on the other way, because we have done it one way. Now he wanted us to do it with him the other way. He also invited 3 other people: Adela Garcia, Ricardo Rodari, and Mariano, and I can't remember his last name. Mariano was in Indonesia, Ricardo was in Switzerland, and Adela is in Argentina. So he invited the 5 of us to join him in the training.
So we were mainly doing the teaching, so we were invited only to join the class that we were given. But we decided that we wanted to join the whole program. So we started to attend to all the classes and be there close to Adalberto. So there were some moments that he couldn't find, even though his niece was there to help me in translation. There were some moments that we could also help with the translation. But the translation is not bringing the words from Portuguese to English. It has to do also with the cultural thing. So in that sense, because of our prior connection with the States, so there were many cultural things that we understood in a different way. So it was really very nice, and he was very open to listen to us. So without thinking about it, we became part of the whole training. And for us, it was an amazing opportunity to be there and to start to get to know the American culture and what was happening to people when they were listening to these ideas that maybe some of them were not new, because he was speaking, integrative community speaks about systemic theory. So there are ideas that are already known. But the cultural thing was very, very important. And Adalberto was really very open to talk with us, and the way of speaking and the way he used language, because he's very used to be very open, it became not very appealing to some of the peoples that were taking the training. So that was one of our roles, unintended role, because we didn't think about it that way, but it happened.
Can you give an example of something that was like a cultural clash, if anything in mind?
For example,
I guess the biggest one and the most salient one was the use of the word Negro. Because negro in Brazil is a color. It doesn't have a connotation. But he would use it, instead of saying black, he used Negro because that was what came to his head, without understanding what is the political and the ideological and the historical conversation of that word in the States. I think that would be, for me, the most salient one. And we even had to call him in the middle of the class, telling him, Adalberto, please, you cannot use that word. If you want to mention the color of the skin, please say black. So that was, I think that was the biggest one among many others.
mm-hmm. But also it was like this part that we wanted the training to be successful. So we wanted not to have any discussion that will bring the conversation into another place. So, but that brought us very close to Adalberto in the way the training was taking place. And there was a man that left the training because he felt really very offended. And that Alberto was really very direct in the way he present his ideas. And people are very used to him because he has been for more than 30 years around. So in Latin America, people really adore him. So it was something really very different and very new.
Yeah, and I can see, for people listening, I'm also married to a Latino man, and my husband is a professor and a doctor, and his conversational style is extremely direct and sometimes feels abrasive to people,
Exactly.
right? And sometimes I have to tell him in conversation like, no, not quite like that, So it's I think the cultural communication style is definitely a big difference.
But also the status. I think it was not
Yeah,
only
exactly.
he had been practicing this for 30 years. He has been extremely successful. He started in the northeast of Brazil in the town of Fortaleza, but eventually ICT is part of the Brazilian health system. So he's really adored in Brazil because he has done an amazing work. So at this point, he can do whatever he wants. He has the luxury of doing whatever he wants because that's the position and the academic and social status he has. So when he comes to a country where nobody knows him and he behaves that way, it's very difficult for the other to engage with him in a way that's comfortable.
And another thing that happened was that when he started coming to the US and Ken being a psychiatrist, so it was the idea because in Brazil it's part of the mental health system. So it was like, okay, we can do it in the States. And we start finding that there was a huge gap. And he could do that in Brazil because he has been there for a very long time. But this is something that we start learning, that we have to move from bringing these ideas into directly into the psychiatric or medical world. No, so that was also one of the main learnings.
Yeah, that's the health system here, as you know, is a whole different thing. It's a whole different thing, and especially when we talk about mental health and like specifically, yeah. So I can see that there might have been some assumptions about what was going to work, and it's not
It's not.
possible here.
Now,
Yeah.
on the other hand, if we speak about the history of community work, is very much connected to advocacy and social justice. And this movement has nothing to do with that. This is a movement that empowers the individual and asks people to speak in the first person I. So when people started to talk about we as a group and we're advocating for political or ideologies, this was another big break because people were expecting that this training was going to give them skills to do advocacy, to advocate for others, or to represent a community. And community therapy, the way Adalberto created it, doesn't have that intention. So there was also a gap in the expectation of what the training is for and what are the groups that participate in community therapy, in integrative community therapy, achieve as part of the participation.
And it has a part of the steps of community therapy. It has guidelines. And these guidelines, one of the things they speak about is that we invite people not to speak about ideology or political preferences because all these ideas will bring us apart. So what we are inviting people is to speak about their experience, their emotions, that this will bring us together and create connection. And this is something that we can connect with one of the pillars of ICT, that is cultural anthropology. That's one of the pillars, and it's very important because wherever you go, you will find differences. And it's very important to take these differences into account. So it becomes a challenge and it becomes an opportunity of learning and creating something according to the culture.
Yeah, that's super important to note. And I think, as you know, right now in the United States, there's so much going on culturally, socially, politically that is creating more and more division between people. So I feel like that's one of the things I find hopeful is bringing people together where we're not talking about those kinds of ideological things that are exacerbating those divisions, but to really connect with people one-on-one on the human level. You know, I think we're all craving that actually here. Yeah.
Yes, but also when you speak about ICT and you speak about the connection with emotions, it might sound a little bit like naive. And it's also, it has its challenges to how you describe this practice, because it's a whole methodology that's very well organized and structured. But one thing is when you have the experience and you live through it, so many things will make sense. But there is a challenge how to put it in words that it doesn't sound, I will say again, naive or romantic, nor it's really very well based and provides a very good structure to include the individuals and the participants and to create and build the community.
And I guess we've been talking about ICT now for a while, but we haven't said what ICT is. So maybe we are arriving to the moment where we have to describe
Yes,
what ICT
please.
is. So I'm going to just go directly to Adalberto's words. He says that integrative community therapy is a conversational methodology that embraces human suffering through community-based conversations. These open and public conversations invite participants to address their everyday life challenges, creating bonds of solidarity and care, and building a sense of community.
And so that still kind of doesn't get at what exactly happens when you attend a round. And Ñeca, you were starting to kind of allude to that there's kind of a multi-step process with some ground rules that guide that conversation, that the facilitators use to guide that conversation and hold that space. Right? Just to give people kind of an idea that it's not just an open conversation, that there's actually steps that you go through and some ground rules that you kind of agree to as you enter the conversation.
Yes, and it has its 5 steps. Well, really it's 6, but the steps you use in the round are only 5, because the first one is how you create the community you are going to work with. But the whole sequence of how these steps are organized is a way of inviting people to feel welcome to a space. And it starts also as a Brazilian methodology. It has music. And so when you bring music, you allow people to connect their brains in different ways. So people get more relaxed. And you start also by sharing, well, you introduce what community therapy is, and then you have some music and you have a dynamic that could be, and we learn this. In Brazil, people will drive crazy and will start dancing and moving, but we understood that in the US, it has to be more like a meditation. It has to be a moment that people can connect with themselves, feel less anxious, and start feeling that they can participate. So, and then we have the step that people share what they are grateful for. But all this is presented in a way that it doesn't matter what you share. It could be something very small or could be something very relevant for some people. But the way you open the space and you allow people to speak and you listen to them, this is the role of the facilitator, to go through the steps and invite people to go from one step to the other. And then you invite people to share their dilemmas. And you were asking about the pebble in the shoe. No, so the use of metaphors is something that it's very important because allows people to connect to it in very different ways. So a pebble could be something small, something bigger. You can imagine it. You can even feel how does it feel to have a very small pebble in your feet and how it's very uncomfortable. So the use of metaphor is a way of inviting people that they can share their own pebble. It could be small, it could be big, but again, you are not presented it in a certain way, and the intention is to be inviting others to participate.
Ñeca, can we go back to the welcoming just to highlight some
Yes.
particular things? So what we usually do is, in order to set the stage, it can be online or it can be in person, we are very careful about the way we organize the space, because the space needs to be conducive to have horizontality and to sit in a circle where everybody can see everybody, including the facilitators, that they are sitting down with the rest of the participants, because the facilitators are also participants in themselves. So we start with some music that would be relevant for the community you're working with. You welcome, and as Ñeca said, you explain what the round is all about, including the settings, the bathrooms, all the things you have to do to make the space safe and comfortable. And then after explaining that, you share the guidelines for participation in the round, which is very, very important, because the guidelines of how you participate in the round will construct the safe space. And the first one is speak from the first person I. The only person you are representing in this space is yourself. You do not speak for a group, you don't speak for the community, you are only speaking for yourself. We invite people to be brief and allow space for the others, not to talk about politics or ideology, because politics and ideology separate people. We encourage people to share feelings, because feelings bring us together. And we invite people not to judge and not to provide like sermons. So all of this starts creating an atmosphere where our intention is to open space for everybody in a way that everybody is aware that there are more people in the room and they're not alone there, and everybody should have a chance or an opportunity to speak. And then we move, as Ñeca said, to the dynamic that we learn that in the States we have to do it differently. And that's one of the first changes we made in the round, moving from a more active, dancing, expressive to a more inner experience. And we also changed the celebration, which is a word they use in Brazil for being thankful for. When we invited people in the States to celebrate, we got very little response. When we invited them to be thankful, then we started to get a lot of engagement in the way they share what they were grateful for. So through our experience of doing many rounds with the people we were working with, we started to be able to make some changes.
This is the end of part 1 of Stephanie's conversation with Sylvia London and Ñeca Rodriguez. Please be sure to join us again next week for part 2 as they break down the benefits of integrative community therapy. Say Something Studios.